How's it going, everybody? So I recently ran into a situation where a guy that was washing one of my cars wiped the gauges with like a towel that was wet with Armor All. That resulted in the gauge cluster plastic, like the covering, getting stained and getting all these blotches, which were very difficult to get out. So I kind of did the following video to show you ways that you can potentially address this. Now on my Tiguan, it was pretty easy enough to do with some headlight cleaning gear, but on a spare cluster that I had, a spare Miata NB cluster, I tried to take it a step further if you really had like a more extreme situation. So I was working on doing that. My baby is here running around the house. He thinks the camera is hilarious, so he wants to speak to it. He's been in front of it before, back when he was a little guy. We did a video on putting his baby seat inside the Camaro, and definitely gonna do a follow-up to that because I have a bigger baby seat now, and I still put this guy in the Camaro, so stay tuned for that. So let's say your gauge cluster has a bunch of scratches and then also just this sort of weird staining that they tend to get over time. Now some of that could be because of Armor All and similar products getting on it that stains it. Now I've looked around for ways to try to resolve this because this happened very aggressively to the Tiguan, because the dude that was washing it would wipe it with a rag that he'd used to Armor All other things and stain that gauge cluster considerably. So I found the multi-pronged approach is what works best. I didn't find a single solution to do it, but here's what I figured out. I bought these Armor All Restoration, headlight restoration wipes, and they didn't do the whole job on their own, but they got me close. So basically this smeared off the weird stains, but kind of left everything blotchy, kind of like hazed over. And then I found the product that I was originally looking for when I ended up buying this, and that is Meguiar's PlastX. Now I had to go to NAPA, and they didn't even have it on the shelves. I had to ask them, and they went and got it from the warehouse. But a combination of these two things I found does a pretty good job of eliminating that stuff. So let me show you how I do it. You don't want to touch that stuff with your bare hands. It doesn't appear friendly, and you probably don't want to breathe it either. So use a wide open space, use respiratory protection. It's not nice. It has a really strong smell to it. So there's the cleaning and oxidation removal thing, and there's the UV sealant protection. I didn't ever get around to using that because I found that the cleaning and oxidation removal doesn't really do what I need it to do. It might work on headlights if they're mildly, botched, but other than that, it doesn't work that well. So let's open this guy up. Here it is. Let's just wipe this entire thing. And it very quickly sort of eats through that oxidation and gets most of it out. Has like an alcohol smell about it. It's kind of funky. I'm gonna focus especially on this top area where I saw a lot of oxidation. It's definitely cleared it up somewhat. There's still plenty of it there if you look at it really close. I wonder if some of that is not underneath. Well, it's definitely on the surface. Alright. Definitely some filth on there because I see the pad getting kind of dirty. Let's flip over to another side of the pad. Okay. So now I'm just going to let that dry off for a little bit, and once it's fully dry, then I'll move on to the next step. So as you can see, this is still pretty hazy. The oxidation is pretty much there. Now, if I wanted to get this absolutely perfect and have no swirls whatsoever, I could sand this down with a very fine sandpaper first. And that would probably take out all the imperfections and then polish it back out with something like the Meguiar's. Let's try just applying the Meguiar's at this point. Get a microfiber cloth and just shake up this Meguiar stuff, make sure it's mixed up good. Alright, let's just put like a small amount of this stuff on here. Alright, that should be plenty. So we'll take a bit of the microfiber and we'll just work this stuff in and see if it has enough grit to where it can eat off the swirls and other stuff I'm seeing. This works pretty well on the Tiguan, so let's see if it works on this Miata gauge cluster to some degree of decency. So I'll hit it up. It definitely looks less hazy than before. It's definitely not perfect. It looks much worse on camera because the camera catches more glare than what your eye does. But it's definitely not perfect looking at it up close. Now, if this were installed on the dashboard of the car, because of, you know, the hood and the shadows and other things, this would probably look just about perfect. Just looking at it with my own eyes, it looks pretty good. So you can still see those weird oxidation stains. And there's quite a bit of swirling. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit this up with like 2000 grit paper and just have an even finish on it before I polish it out with the blastings. I'll try like a corner first, somewhere not that noticeable, and see if it works. And if not, then obviously we'll have to look for another solution. All right, so what I did at this point is I took 2500 grit sandpaper and I just sanded this little corner here. So as you can see, it's all hazy. So let's go and try to see if Meguiar's PlastX is the right grit that I'm going to need to get that out. Shake this stuff up pretty decent. And just apply a little bit of it. Of course, the microfiber may not be the ideal thing for polishing it out. I might need some kind of buffing wheel. Let's try. The sound there. That buffed out pretty decently, but you can still see quite a bit of swirling on camera, again catching much more haze than the human eye is. Just to my eye, I feel that the 2500 grit scratches may not be fine enough to get this fully polished. I think this needs to get shined even further. So however, looking at it from certain angles, it definitely came to a pretty nice state. So I think I'm going to sand this entire thing and bring it up to 2500 and then probably buy some more different grits and try to get this all the way, let's say like 3000 or more, and then we'll polish with Meguiar's. I might need an intermediate polish, but it looks like this can definitely get me close. So I'm going to keep sanding and see what happens. So here's what it looks like sanded up to 1000 grit and then just allowed to dry in front of an industrial fan. Still do have some of those weird oxidation marks. They're pretty deep. I'm going to hit it with 2000 next, and then from there I'll go up to 2500. All right, here it is at 2000 grit. I definitely feel that even with 2000 grit, the scratches and swirls are just not small enough. I'm gonna bring it up to 2500 grit, and then we'll hit it with Meguiar's PlastX because that's the best we can do for today. I'll have to go out tomorrow and get 3,000 to 5,000 probably to get this perfect. All right, so at this point I brought this up to 2500, and in my opinion, the scratches from 2500 are still too deep for this to take out with just PlastX. I think I'm gonna have to go out for sure and get 3,000 to 5,000 to really be able to shine this up as much as it needs to, and then hit it with the PlastX and get it perfectly swirl free and clear. So I'm gonna hit it with PlastX right now just to get it better than what it is now, and then tomorrow I'll continue, you know, kind of polishing it out, the sandpaper, and then hitting it with polish again. Obviously, if I had probably a buffer, I might do a better job of kind of shining that up with the PlastX. But you should be able to do it with microfiber if you have this sanded fine enough. So let's go ahead and just polish that up and see where we end up today. Crazy enough, some of these like oxidation stains are real deep. So a lot of it came out, but some of it is still there. Shake up our PlastX, make sure the grit is nicely distributed. Do this real quick. Let's work this stuff into the surface and see where we end up. All right, that's one. Let's get another clear portion of cleaning microfiber and hit it some more. Remove some of this stuff as we go along. All right, another portion of microfiber. Right bit of microfiber to hit this with. All right, that's about our end result. So it's much more clear, obviously, than before I added the PlastX, but it's still very hazy. Now I should mention that if I were to clear coat this, and I just know from throwing water on it, if I hit this with clear coat, if I hit this with a clear coat right now, it would come out absolutely like 100% clear and look perfect, right? But obviously I don't want to clear coat this. I just want this to be shiny plastic. Now, putting clear coat on it might help, you know, kind of protect it so it doesn't get as scratched in the future. But right now, just buffing with PlastX and a microfiber by hand, you will not get this fully clear. You won't be able to get out enough scratches to really make it look uniform. Maybe with a buffing pound, you know, 2500. Maybe with a buffing pad on, you know, like a dual action or something, 2500 might have been enough. But definitely doing what I'm doing, you're gonna wanna go to 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Really get that as smooth as possible before PlastX. Like, this is better, but it's not perfect. And obviously, it was better in the beginning before I, you know, did any of this. So tomorrow's another day. We'll test out a few more grits and then polish it up and see where we end up. I took this thing all the way up to 5,000 grit. So I'm going to try once more with the polish, and if I don't get the result that we're looking for, then we're going to have to call it for this video. But what I'm thinking is I'll probably end up buying like the machine polishing disc, and then use the Meguiar's with that in order to really get the machine polish, get all the scratches out, and get this back to clear. So let's see. Hopefully I don't have to go to that extent, but here goes nothing. Very easy to use too much of this stuff. Definitely could stand to use less. I also took the lens obviously off of the cluster just to make this a little easier to sand, but be careful not to break the clips when you're applying pressure as you polish it. Okay, let's go in here. It's looking a lot better. Gotta work all this stuff off before it goes and dries. So that's a much better result than I had before. Could definitely stand to get a little bit more of the polish removed from it. Not sure how optically clear it will look on camera, but in person this looks leaps and bounds better than what we had before. The only downer is looking at it under bright light, I can still see the swirl marks of the 5,000 grit, which is crazy. But not the end of the world, because once this is in the car, you definitely won't be able to see that. They're so fine now that I polished this out. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. Definitely got the oxidation marks out from before for the most part. I would say that realistically, if you're going to do this, you want to do a machine polish on the end. In other words, have a polishing disc and apply the compound to it and use that, because it will do a much better job of really getting the compound in there and removing the fine scratches. You'll end up with a much better final product that's much more optically clear than what this is. This is pretty good for my needs, but it's not as perfect as I had hoped when I started undergoing this process. So just keep that in mind. And another thing is, like, I'm doing the very polishy thing of swirling, but it might have been better to just go back and forth, to just have straight lines all the way across. That might be less noticeable to the human eye. So just details to keep in mind, but really not sure how good it looks on the camera, but it looks pretty good in person. Backing is a little dirty now because obviously, like, I was, holding this like that while wet sanding, so I gotta clean the backing, but I'm pretty happy with that for now. Probably just wipe the backing with the same microfiber. That's plenty. And it's really easy to reinstall on here. You just slide it, line all the tabs, and pop it on. Let's get the bottom tabs and then get the tops. You do gotta stretch it a little bit. It's not like crazy. There you go. All the tabs are in. This is on. Much better optically clear product than what I had before. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now, I'm definitely gonna try some further steps in a future video. So if you guys want to learn more about this, you have more interest in this type of subject, feel free to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you're notified when I post up another one. If you have any questions or feedback, feel free to leave that in the comment section. If you've done this before and you have some suggestions on how to improve, I would love to read that. And as always, thank you guys for watching.